supporting sponsor SundanceNow.club, our leading media sponsors New York Magazine and WNET, and I also want to thank the staff and volunteers here at the festival. So thanks to all of them and to our associate producer here for NYC Pro, Shana Weingast. This panel in particular is co-presented by Chicken and Egg Pictures, a huge partner here at Doc NYC. They've been on board since the beginning, and we're thrilled to have a continued partnership with them. And they'll also be back on Thursday, so make sure you come back on Thursday. So I'm going to turn this panel over to Jenni Wolfson from Chicken and Egg Pictures, who's our moderator. Are you okay, Jenni?
Okay. It's working?
Yeah. Okay, so take it away, Jenni, and she'll introduce the rest of the panel.
All right, good. Hopefully I'll do a better job than I did getting on stage. Good morning, everyone. So just before we get started, we'd love to see a show of hands just to get a sense of who is in the audience. How many of you are film directors? Most of you. Okay, what about producers? Okay, so some of you are directors and producers. Okay, so most of you here hustling out there for money to support your film. So hopefully this panel will give you a few pearls of wisdom from our very experienced panelists who come from all angles of raising funds for their films. So what I'd like to do is have each of the panelists introduce themselves, and they'll show you a short clip from their film and just initially talk about what are their main areas of expertise in fundraising, so you also know for sort of Q&A. So I want to start with Dawn Porter. Welcome. If you could introduce yourself, Dawn, briefly say who you are and just tell us a little bit about your fundraising experience, and then when you're ready, introduce your clip.
Good morning. So glad to see you all here. I'm Dawn Porter. I'm a documentary director. My first film was Gideon's Army, which was funded in large part by foundations, and then was produced also by HBO, documentary films, so I can talk about that journey a little bit. And I'm currently working on a film, Trapped, which is funded in part by foundations, but also in large part by private donors and smaller foundations, including Chicken and Egg and Abigail Disney's Fork Films. And I tried to persistently pigeonhole her at the corner, so I got a hello, so I'm going to follow up with, so good to see you, and we're happy for that hello. I think I will talk in great part about applying for foundations, but also my experience in working with private donors.
So do you want to introduce your...
This Trapped, my feature film I'm working on right now is called Trapped. Trapped laws are targeted regulations of abortion providers. And I've been working on this film for the last 3 years, following a physician who flies down to clinics where there are no abortion providers. In the state of Mississippi, there's 1 abortion provider. In Alabama, there are 3 who do surgical abortions. In Texas, that case, which on Friday was granted cert to go to the Supreme Court. So when I started the film, I did not know that the clinic we would be following would take their journey to the Supreme Court. This is the trailer for Trapped, which we are hoping to finish in December.
So Dawn, just one question for you to begin with, which is, what has been the biggest surprise for you in fundraising for this particular film, Trapped?
I think the biggest surprise has been the success in working with private funders. I think when I was working on Gideon's Army, which is a film about criminal justice system, criminal justice is something that's a bit more amorphous. And I think the reason I was attracted to Trapped is there's a lot of great abortion films, but a lot of them are focused on the battle between extremists and kind of a religious battle. And I think this is a political battle. I think that the discussion about abortion in this country is a discussion about our political values and democracy, and that's really how I framed the film. And I think a number of people are recognizing that this is part of our greater political conversation. So we've had a lot more success with private funders, and in fact, more than half of the budget of this film is raised through private, small to large donors.
Okay, so finding people that really care about the issue and want
Yeah,
to.
finding your audience and going outside of the film community. You know, you do have to be careful because this film will be on PBS, and so we could not take money, for example, from Planned Parenthood or from an advocacy organization, but we certainly could. They could make introductions for us to people who were interested in the topic, and that is completely appropriate for PBS. So your advocacy organizations may not be your funders, that might be your first instinct, but they usually aren't your funders, but they might be your greatest megaphone, and they also might be people who can introduce you to people who might be ready to take the plunge with the film, and your film might just hit that sweet spot for somebody who wants to donate to the issue and wants to do it in an immediate way.
Okay, that's an important point. So Patricia, could you introduce yourself, give us a little bit of your fundraising experience and introduce your kit?
So my name is Patricia Benabe. So up there it says The Hand That Feeds, which I did work on, but we're going to see a clip of Councilwoman. Most of the projects that I've worked on has had the support of public television. Complementary to that, we also have the support of foundations and private donations. So that's really the bulk of my experience with foundations, private donations. All the projects that I've worked on have had crowdfunding campaigns. I haven't run them myself, but that's been a common denominator in the project that I've worked on as well. And Councilwoman is about a hotel housekeeper from the Dominican Republic who wins a seat in Rhode Island Council. And it's the story about how she juggles those two roles, being a hotel housekeeper staff, and have her own politics.
She's quite something. So Patricia, what would you say have been some of your biggest surprises since you've been fundraising for this film?
I'm not sure that I've had surprises just yet, but I've had a lot of challenges, and it's how do you move forward with very little to no funding in place? And with Councilwoman in particular, Margot had a lot of footage, but it wasn't edited properly, and I knew that we knew that funders needed to see an edited piece. So it was just devoting, but basically we needed to pay the little money that we had to an editor, but also, well, I think it would be more helpful if I took more quality. What I do when I have little money and need a lot of work done is be very honest about it up front with the people that I'm asking to come in and put in some work. And it's usually two scenarios. One is somebody who's emerging and the project would be a good fit for them for personal professional reasons, but also look good on the resume, and they are willing to do it for under what their standard rate is. Another scenario is someone who's a veteran and makes money from high-paying jobs, but likes the challenge of that smaller projects have, like creatively or thematically, and bring something with them, and they're willing to work on it and squeeze it in between the other projects that pay their bills.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, and I think that transparency is really important about where you're at and what you do and don't have in place. I think also your fundraising, people appreciate that.
Yes, and one thing that I've also done this fall is say we're fundraising and we have all these grants out there and we may get all of them, we may get none of them. I'm not really sure, so why don't we do a scale system? When you present a quote, give me a bare bones scenario, give me a midpoint scenario, and give me a really lush scenario. And so we start with supposing that it's a bare bones, and then eventually, as these grants start giving responses, we decide whether we stay bare bones, move midpoint, or go all out.
I think that's a good point, because as a film funder also, we're often looking to see, well, will the filmmaker finish the film, and if they don't get all the money that they need, how will they go about doing that? So Jen, Last but not least, if you could introduce yourself, share your fundraising experience, and introduce your kit.
Sure. So I'm Jen Brea, and I'm a first-time documentary filmmaker. My film is, the working title is Canary in a Coal Mine, and it's a, I think as I've been thinking of what to sort of say today about what my experience has been, in some way it feels unique, but I think every film's experience sort of getting finished is unique. And it's a personal film about my struggle with chronic fatigue syndrome. And so I come from it both as a filmmaker, but also a subject and someone who's very embedded in the community that is sort of the core audience and base for the film. And so for me, this began, I actually began making the film when I was bedridden, and so I had no way to go out and fundraise, and didn't actually know any filmmakers. I was starting basically from zero, and kind of designed and launched this really big crowdfunding campaign, and raised over $212,000. And so that's kind of formed the bulk of our funding to date, and sort of funded production. And then we've also been able to put together money from a variety of sort of small foundation grants, and then also a lot of additional private funding. So I think for me, a big piece has been sort of continuing to leverage the early visibility that we had to sort of find that audience and find those private donors. And so we've started to just get a lot more large donations come in from unexpected places, because the film has been, because we've invested a lot in raising the profile of film throughout production. And so I guess what I'm going to show now is just a trailer from the film. I look forward to your questions.
So I'd like to ask all of you, please feel free to jump in with each other, but again, at Chicken and Egg Pictures, we're a film funder, but we also raise money to give it away and support filmmakers, and on a regular basis we're sort of tasked with what is our strategy. There are opportunities out there with individuals, foundations, crowdfunding, all of that. How do you channel your limited resources and your limited time, and how do you develop your fundraising strategies? Anyone want to kick off?
I mean, fundraising is, most of you are directors and producers. It's really just one of the core skill sets that we have and we have to face. So I think what's great about being at conferences like this, in addition to a festival, is sharing information. It is important, as Abigail Disney said this morning. Funders usually have different either styles or areas of interest, and it is important to see what they've funded in the past. It may be a topic relevant. So for the large funders, they're pretty clear, particularly places like MacArthur. And I want to point them out they're a very large funder, and they have very high standards, but I find that their application process is really quite straightforward. It's very clear what they fund. They say, we fund these areas, that's it. So if you're in that area, okay, you've already gotten, but they have a very clear process. It's relatively quick. So you may or may not be successful, but at least it's nice when you're in our stage of, on the outside kind of trying to look in. It's really transparent. So I encourage you all to look and see if your film subject is in their area. That's a good one to look at. And there are large places like Ford, and with Ford, increasingly what's great about them is they are very much marrying their film funding with the issue priorities of the foundation. So they have recently undergone a very extensive redesign process of identifying their issue areas. I think that what those are still kind of being clarified, but it's worth just poking around and seeing what they're working on. And for Ford, if you can kind of make connections with the issue area folks, that can be a really terrific way of then getting the attention of the film folks. Because the first thing the film group will do is go to the issue area folks and say, is this in line with your work? Because they're really funding what's in line with their work. So those would be some, I think, I think when we're looking at, for our film, when we're looking at the big foundations, that's kind of where we began, is our subject matter in line with their foundation priorities?
So I guess for this one we've relied, as I said, mostly on crowdfunding and private funding, and I had no strategy. I still don't really have a strategy. It's been very much about kind of feeling our way into each new opportunity and taking advantage of it. So I think if I had started with a plan from the beginning, it would have changed a lot by the time we got to this point. And I think a part of it is because, I think with foundations, I think you can have a clearer strategy, and perhaps if you're also looking at equity financing, but with private donations, it's really, I think, very idiosyncratic because you don't know where the next donor is going to come from. But I think that there are things that you can be doing all the time to sort of try to increase the likelihood that you're going to find the right partners. I mean, the way that I look at it, there's just like trillions of dollars like kind of sloshing around it in the world, and what I need for my film is actually a very small amount of money relative to what there is to give potentially. And I know that there are people out there who care passionately about this issue, who would want the opportunity to have this kind of impact, and the chances of them finding me before the film is out is actually relatively small, unless I start taking steps to sort of crawl as many networks as possible, really be as present as possible in the places where I'm most likely to find people who care, who are passionate about this. So it is about sort of going, I think, to trying to take advantage of media opportunities, going to conferences in your issue area, looking outside the film community, and just really talking to as many people as possible. So for me, it's been this very kind of organic process, and miraculously every time that we're about to run out, someone calls up from out of nowhere. So I kind of am, it honestly feels like there's some like larger force out there, and that's kind of hard to explain, but that's sort of been my experience.
I agree with Jen in that it's hard to have a strategy from the start, because I think in the start, your story's a little seed and you're not really sure what's going to grow out of it. And so Dawn's point was very important, that you have to know and understand what the funders want in the stories that they fund. But to get to that point, it's very important that you, or the filmmakers, know what the story that they want to tell is. And an example that comes to mind is one of the filmmakers I started working with last year. It talked to me about a film about AIDS, and then as the edit progressed, it was very much a film about family secrets, family conflict, love and how you're being loved. So just, I would say that Jen is very on point, but maybe that itself is a strategy, even though it doesn't feel like it, because it's so amorphous. But I think that's really the most sensible way to proceed. It's just get to know the story, and as the story's shaping, then you'll probably be in a position to approach MacArthur's out there. But start small. Start maybe with private donations of the people around you, friends and family, the local humanities council, and before you go to NEH. So see what's immediately around you to support you in planting that seed, and then grow from there.
Okay, thank you. And so, Dawn, your film Gideon's Army was about criminal justice and trapped, about the trap laws. So I'd love to hear from you, and Patricia, you've worked on several films. Have you been able to bring along, especially I guess individuals from one film to another, even though the topic might be so incredibly different?
I definitely have, and it's a good point to, when you're first starting, there's several stages of a film, and your fundraising strategy changes along as your film matures and as you mature into the story. So when you first started, I'll give you an example of Trapped. I was shooting on another film, and I was in Mississippi, and I read about that there was one abortion clinic in the state of Mississippi. And so I just called them up and said, can I come over? Because it's hard to believe. And I met Dr. Parker. And so there was this germ of an idea. So usually your first money is, if you're lucky enough to have a project that had a little bit of money, maybe you can start something. You do need something, right? You need to show people something. So there's no shame in it being your own money that you're using to get there. But you should fairly quickly mature out of your own money stage. Like, I don't know, a general, like at $10,000, like, and you say, I don't have $10,000. Those credit cards and those using your own skills, it adds up really quickly. Like if you're actually honest with yourself about how much you're spending on your movie, you can get to that level. So it may not be cash out, but think about the time you're investing, the shooting, the editing. If you had to pay somebody, what are those equal? So it feels like while you're figuring it out and you're in the smaller friends and family stage, but you should focus your idea very quickly. So for what Gideon's Army helped me do was to have relationships with funders so I could see who might support my next project like this. So even though the topics were completely different, I did go back to chicken and egg because I had a successful relationship with them. And that's, this is documentary community in particular is a community of relationships. And so you may meet somebody sitting next to you who may end up working with you in some way on a project. And I think that's really important. One of the things I love about documentary is meeting people and fostering those relationships and learning from people. So I wouldn't say that I just went back to all the people who had funded Gideon's Army, but instead, thought about use them as resources for referrals. You really have to create a new strategy around every project. I don't think you can say, this was my family for this film and now come with me, because they were all off on their own, other projects. So I think it's more bring your funders with you in that they are now part of your ecosystem of resources of either expertise or funding. And expertise is often just as important. Chicken and egg folks have introduced me to people who are in reproductive rights, which is so, so important because they have funded other reproductive rights films. So they were a tremendous resource that way. So I think you just keep building onto your community. You don't just ever, as Abigail Disney said, you don't just let them go and move on to the next.
There's a big common denominator in my projects on social issues, Latin America and or US Latino, so that naturally brings me back to LPB. Public television has been a big recurrent supporter. But like Don said, every project is different, so I do try and start off a clean slate and just start thinking what makes sense for this project. Is it the people who backed me up before, or is it someone else? So yeah, but it's definitely, the relationships will help whether or not they fund recurrently.
Okay, thank you. So I'm going to open up shortly for questions because I think there's so many people here with so many questions. I'm going to ask one or two more. But could you talk about your experiences and how you've been successful or not in pitch forums like Hot Docs and Good Pitch, and how have you made those work for you? And would you strongly recommend that people get into those, and if so, which ones?
I think that there's a danger in sort of pitching too early. I think you want to make sure that you're at least clear on what your story is and the story that you want to sort of tell, especially if you're going to be sort of communicating, I think, with people who are in positions to sort of buy your film or distribute your film. I participated in the Paley doc pitch competition, which was a really great experience, but I was so early and was talking, I was in development and talking to people who were looking at finished films, and it was just a crushing experience in every way. So I think you have to make sure it's the right time for your film, but it's been an incredible experience for me. I pitched at Sundance, at IFP, and then I guess a few weeks ago did Big Pitch New York. And the latter was a really amazing experience because, I mean, I think one of the things I've known for a while, I mean, in some ways there's been like the process of making the film, and then the outreach campaign has been kind of slowly building and really developing alongside the production of the film, and that in and of itself has been really good for the fundraising because even though it's now 2 years since the initial big crowdfunding campaign, people who might want to support the film still see me. They still see me in the community doing things, and I'm still out there. And as we've started kind of making relationships with potential partners for outreach impact, that then also leads to fundraising opportunities. So it's the sort of the relationships and the fundraising. I mean, really raising money is just a kind of byproduct of the storytelling and the relationship building. And so I think waiting until the end to start thinking about impact is probably not the best strategy. And waiting until the end, I know so many people who are, near fine cut and then they start their Facebook page. And I think it's really important now to sort of have that kind of media presence earlier. But the question was about the pitch forum. I mean, I think Good Pitch has been amazing in part because it's allowed us to sort of take the film outside of the immediate issue area and kind of draw these really novel connections to other potential funders and supporters in women's rights and disability rights in healthcare, and also sort of float ideas about what we might do later with people who understand these sort of specific audiences we want to reach and who also may have access to funding. And so we've raised a lot of money there, we continue to raise money, and I think just, again, it's all about raising your profile and helping your film to kind of matchmake with people who might want to support it.
I've done the Hot Docs Forum pitch twice and Good Pitch, and I highly recommend doing them. They're very different pitch experiences, and if you're selected for a pitch forum, you should do some investigation into what the purpose is and what the format is. The Good Pitch curates people who are likely very close or kind of on that one ring outside of your immediate topic area, and they're fantastic for building audience support and widening your circle. And then Hot Docs is, one of the most terrifying things in the world. There's just all these broadcasters from the world, and you're sitting and you're at the end of the table, and then there's, people ringing like gladiators, and you feel, really vulnerable. But it's the forum that introduces your film to the world, and it plants your flag. So for both of those, I highly agree that you should not do them too early, because you only get that one chance to make that first impression, and that is, for many people, the impression that will stay about your project. But the second thing I would say about those is we are all really busy and think that we know the best use of our time. If you are selected for one of those pitch opportunities, they have preparation processes. Go with their process. They have done it for a long time. You may think it's stupid and you don't need it, but trust me, just go with it. Just do what they want you to do because they're doing it for you. So if they make you sit around for 3 days and talk about what color would you be if you were a documentary tree, just pick a tree. Just do what they want. And it works. I don't know what sometimes, just like you just kind of gotta go with their process and admit you don't know everything. I don't know everything. But they're preparing you for what has been successful for all the people that have come before you. So just thinking, all those jokers can't be wrong, and maybe you'll learn something in the process. So I would just take the time to take advantage of what they're offering. What color would you like? I would be a secretary. I don't know.
Do you want to add anything?
I have experience in two pitches. Good Pitch 2011 was my first time public speaking. I didn't even know I had it in me. But I think if it was not for that, I probably wouldn't be able to sit here today. So it is something outside our comfort zones. But it's always, this may seem very simple and kind of banal, but we spend so much time either in the field or locked in an edit room, and it's a chance chance to speak to your project to the people who are the audience and the people who are looking at it via web stream or whatever, and that's important. That'll benefit the project.
So just one last question for Dawn. I'm going to open up, just because I think you're the only one on the panel that's had the experience with equity funding. If you could talk a little bit about what are some of the things to think about when, thinking about someone investing in your film as opposed to giving your film a grant.
I think that sometimes we think it's the dream, right? Where is the billionaire who's just gonna write me a flippin' check so I don't have to do this anymore, I don't have to fundraise anymore? There's great benefits to finding a benefactor, but there's rules around that too. So the first thing is there's legal rules. If you have a private investor who's going to put, and that person becomes an investor, which means your project is now a commercial entity where you may be thinking of it as an artistic entity, and so there's a little bit of a mind shift. So the first thing is you really do need a lawyer. You have to have documents that verify the investor's ability legally to, you have to form an entity for your project. There has to be something for the person to invest in. And as much as it may seem formalistic and difficult and complicated, it is to your benefit to lay out the terms, to put a monetary value on your project, to have the investor describe what they're investing in, and to set out the expectations. You'll learn a lot about your investor during that process. And if you can't get to an agreement with your investor in working out the documents, imagine making a film with that person. Because it takes us several years to do these projects. You don't want to be in business with somebody who you can't talk with, or somebody you're going to feel like has taken over your project or wants something that you don't want. So go through those steps, and it's worth using the little money you have to get the right lawyer to help you through that process. So that's kind of the more difficult side. On the beneficial side, I have such a great investment partner, this person who's an experienced film person, and she just brings a whole wealth of other contacts, business savvy. When I'm thinking about, she's artistic, so she's just a really great partner. So sometimes, we're all like this, like, you can be slightly asshole-ish about it because, like, you just want to make your movie and you don't want anybody else to tell you stuff. But when somebody's willing to part with their money for your film, it's really nice to welcome them in and really listen to them and figure out how you can work together and make use of everything that they're bringing besides money. And that's not in a patronizing way, but really actually bringing them into your team. None of these films gets made alone. And so if you have a great producer, for example, that expands your world. I have had the joy of working with two of the best producers for documentary, Marilyn Ness and Julie Goldman. And having that family around you, you need them. So you may want to, I'm not going to say punch them in the face, but they want to punch me in the face, but you need them. And just like that, I think if you can find an investor who is part of your good circle, who you can really get more than money from, that's a good scenario to try and be in.
Yes, the lady there, yes, scarf.
Hi, my question is about private funders. Did you set up 501c3s? Did you get a fiscal sponsor? And if so, how did you choose that fiscal sponsor?
For us, we use Women Make Movies as our fiscal sponsor. And so for private funders who are not large investors, who are not putting in $50,000 or more, so we did a Kickstarter campaign, and through that Kickstarter campaign, some people came and said, I want to give you money, but I want to give it through a 501c3, so they would give it to Women Make Movies, who takes a fee and gives it to us. So there is a film entity that's set up. It's Track the Film LLC. It's its own LLC, but that is the owners of that are Trilogy Films, my company, and then the large investor. If there are big foundations, they are not owners of the film. Those are grants that just go to Trilogy Films. And if there are smaller, $1,000, $5,000, $10,000, they usually go through Women Make Movies. But that just comes, they're not owners of the film the same way. You own the film. It's only your investor who owns a piece of the project. At least that's how we've structured it.
I also work with fiscal sponsors. When we make movies is also a fiscal sponsor, not for Councilwoman. Margot has a fiscal sponsor in Massachusetts. I'm not even sure which one it is. I'm not sure. The reason why we don't set up a 503 thing is that it hasn't been worth our time or money, and we just do an LLC. So the film has its own LLC ideally, and whatever money we make on the back end funnels through that LLC, and then contributions come through the fiscal sponsor. I personally pick fiscal sponsors based on however low that percentage they take is.
Yes.
Hi, I've always been
You
both
should stand
director.
up. Thank you.
I've always been both director and producer of my films, and traveling around on the circuit with my film right now, everyone's going, "You don't have a producer?" So I would love to think about having a producer on my next film, and would love your advice on finding the right match.
I'm a producer, and I often work with director producers. I think the advantage of it is, as simple as not being alone, having someone to share the burden with you, and something I try to do with, I also write on my own, so I can relate a little bit what they're going through in their creative process, and so I just try to. And the logistics around that, and I also facilitate, emotionally I facilitate also a lot, I think, without them knowing.
They know.
I think it's good to have, but you need to have a good relationship. This person you need to feel comfortable with this person. And you also need to, there are many different ways of collaborating between director, producers, and producers. So you just have to, there's a lot of self-awareness that needs to go on your part to then find out what you need from another person and gauge who has that.
A good way to find somebody is look at films that are similar to your film, or similar to in style, and see who the producers were, and you can just reach out to them. So Julie produced Gideon's Army. She had like 19,000 projects when I got obsessed with Trapped. Marilyn had worked on E-Team, which was a film I loved, and so then I just kind of stalked her for months, and she said no like 4 times because she was busy, and then literally, I think it was at a Doc NYC or an IFP panel, we were sitting in the audience together, and I was like, I took my investor, I said, she's busy, and she says she can't, and she goes, you go back to her and you say, what's it gonna take? And I was like, that's tacky. She's like, just do it. So we were sitting in the audience, and literally we're texting each other while there's a panel going on, and I was like, what's it gonna take? And she's like, okay, listen. And it wasn't about money, it was about time and carving out. Because she does such a good job, she wanted to have enough time to devote to the project. So I think once I said to her, and this is, I think, for every director in the room, if you're lucky enough to get a producer, you don't just hand them all the crappy work. You need to all be in it together. So I think once she understood, I wasn't like, here, you do all the budgets and band stuff, and I'm gonna go shoot, and then get the awards later, and I'll see you. But once I said, no, I'm not gonna stop working, and we can divide things out, that made her feel better. So that's what it took. It ain't the money all the time.
Jen, do you have a producer, and if not, how do you?
Yeah, well, I have 2 producers, one based in the US and one based in the UK. We've been doing a fair amount of shooting in Europe. We're also hoping to get some more funding in Europe. It's been harder than I thought, but I still hope. I think it's, it's interesting, because I think, obviously people have panels sort of all the time discussing like what is producing, right? And it's so many different things, and I think some people have a kind of idea that like, oh, it's the person who does the logistics, or it's the person who raises the money, and I think it just really depends. I think it's really about building a complete team around you and being honest with yourself about what you can do and what you're good at, and then really identifying in the people around you sort of what they can bring. And I've had people sometimes sort of say, oh, I can do this whole range of things. So then I think oftentimes as indie filmmakers, like we are called upon to develop a wide skill set, and we need that. But at the same time, everybody has a place where they really feel at home. And so part of my process in kind of building a more effective team has been really learning what people, what I'm good at, what everyone else is good at, and what pieces we all should be carrying together. And so so for me, it's been, a lot of like the creative work and the fundraising, but I'm much more involved in post-production than I was in shooting because of my physical limitations. And so I found someone who is both an amazing sort of on-set director and someone who's really, really good at convincing people to work, at really great rates, which was just really, really crucial for us because it allowed us to make a film that I think is punching above its weight for where we were when we started. And then my other producer is, really, really loves thinking about the industry and like the sort of what is producing and how do you make really great films that find homes. And so she's been a really great thinking partner for both the early outreach stuff as well as thinking about really our strategy for distribution and for having the film reach a wide audience. And I didn't know at the beginning exactly how that was all going to kind of pan out, but it's become a really lovely ecosystem of three. And I think in terms of finding those people, I mean, obviously if you've been in business for a long time, I'm sure you have networks. I didn't when I started, and so it was, I think, we found people through actually through Chicken and Egg and through film festivals and through just really kind of talking to everybody and asking who does films like this, who cares about this, and that's how we found them.
Yes. Can you stand up? Thank you.
Can you talk a little bit about the actual ask when you find someone that you think would support your film, and how much do you build a relationship before you ask and that kind of thing?
That's a great question about the ask, and in addition, if I could build in your question, if you can also talk about how you work out how much to ask for, which is something we all struggle with.
The ask is really hard for me, and that's one of the reasons I value good producers who like asking. It's a skill set to be able to ask, Once you've gotten to the point where somebody, usually what happens is if you get one or two meetings and someone is like, I am interested in this project, they have a number in mind in which they're interested. So if they've invested in film before, you can maybe do a little sleuthing and figure out how much they put into other projects. Because the nightmare is that you under ask, that the person could give you $100,000 and you ask them for 10. So you should try and do some investigation. You can ask them, are you thinking about a range? What would be comfortable for you? They've seen your budget, they know what the gap is. So you can kind of approach the conversation, and I like to ask them. We have one large donor. I'll tell you a very quick story about why your mothers are all right and you should be nice to everybody. At Sundance last year, I was there watching films and going to networking and just kind of enjoying being around doc people. And I was in line for the women's brunch, and this woman in like a snorkel coat just was standing behind me, and we just started talking in line because it was a really long line to get in. And she said, what are you doing? I said, oh, I make documentaries. And she said, she knew my last film, and she said, oh, I'm interested in that topic. And then I saw her later in the festival, and she said, I'm really interested in that topic. So we emailed, and long story long, she gave us a lot of money, because I met her in line and was talking to her. So, but for there, Marilyn asked her what kind of range, and she gave us a big range, with a $50,000 swing. And Marilyn said, I think you should give it the top of that, you're in it, you should be in it. And she was really good at asking. So ask them what they want to give, and people will tell you. So,
Right. So, yeah, any other additions?
I mean, I also strongly dislike asking. I'm the producer, but the only exception to that discomfort is when I'm certain of what I'm asking, and so I get to that number 2 ways: researching how much this foundation or this individual tends to donate to similar projects, but also what will that amount allow you to do. And what we did at Doc Paley a couple of weeks ago with Penitent Heart was we said we have a budget cap of 100,000, but a 5,000 grant would allow us to complete payment to our composer. So you just scale it that way.
Yeah, no, exactly, and I think so. I used to hate fundraising before this experience. Now I love it because it feels like a form of giving and receiving love. And I'm sorry, it sounds sort of strange you haven't had the experience, but I think for me it's been about really taking myself out of it and understanding that I'm not asking for me. I'm not even asking for my film. I'm asking for the possibility of what the story in the world could do and how it could transform people. And once I'm doing that, then there's no room for my own anxiety or fear about it. And then it's just a matter of like, either you're the person to help me do that or you're not, right? And the person for my next film, or maybe you're the person for someone else's film, and I'll introduce you to them when I find that person. And so it's just about getting, like, asking so you can ask the next person. And I think in terms of the amount, I'm always very clear on here is our total budget gap, and here is what we want to raise for, our outreach project, or like a huge number of everything you want to do, because I think it's important for people to always know that it's a process, and you might come ask them again, like that. It's not just that each raise raises 10,000, but then within that I pull something out and I say, we just, this amazing editor just came along, and we are going to work with him, and it's going to make the film incredible, but we have to start now, or we really need to buy this one thing, or we really need to pay for this thing, and then it kind of gives you a $30,000, or I had a period when you raised 50K, and like, we should raise this much money, we're trying to do it from this many people, and that gave a person the opportunity to sort of say, okay, well I can give you 10, or I can give you all of it, because you never really know what they have. And the other thing I would say is that most people who, in 2014 give you $10,000 do so because they can afford to give you 10,000 more a year later. And so a lot of our fundraising has also been about going back to our major donors, showing the progress that we've made, and asking them again.
Yeah, and I think including them, all along the way, I think chemistry and credibility are so important. You have to have that personal connection. They have to believe in you and your talent as a filmmaker and your tenacity, but there also has to be kind of that connection there. And fundraisers always say if you're not getting a lot of no's, you're not doing enough asking. So people will say no, but you never get yeses unless you do lots of asking. Yes, right there in the back.
Sometimes investors, they want a percentage back, or they ask something in return. What would you say is a healthy percentage back, or what are red flags to you when they want too much in return?
The percentage back. There's kind of standard. You should probably have a media lawyer who's experienced. There's pretty standard. I don't want to say the wrong number and then make you think you've given away too much, but it's usually like for documentaries don't necessarily make a lot of money. So one thing I want to say about investing in film in general is it's a very different process on the narrative fiction side. On the fiction side, it's very common. People understand there's an investment vehicle. People are doing it as much for being in the glamour and glitz of the movies as for that ability to maybe be a little bit sunshine, and they're going to make a lot of money. People are usually investing in documentaries because they care about the topic and they want to be in this community. So they're not looking necessarily for some home run money back. I think it's like your principal plus 10% or something like that is kind of a place to start, because you don't want to give, but I say that with the understanding that a lot of people investing in documentary are not doing it because they think they're going to get back their 10%. So, but I would definitely encourage you to talk with, media lawyer person who has that structure, that tiered structure, and those investment documents, because they're pretty standard.
And I think that documentary investors, if they do get money back, it's so that they can invest it also in other documentary films. Do you want to add anything to that?
One of the projects that I'm on, which is near completion, we're anticipating choosing between a grant and equity or investment. And so the pros, how I'm thinking about it is that if we do the grants and then the core filmmaking team doesn't necessarily get paid well, then it can come from the back end. But if we take an investment, we probably take the investment to cover those line items of the director-producer, and then have whatever happen after. I mean, it is uncertain. Personally, I don't feel comfortable banking on that outcome.
Yes.
I was looking forward. Is there ever a conversation with someone, because the docs don't all make money, where it becomes, okay, you have, let's say, $200,000, do you have a conversation about whether that should be an investment, or whether it should go to the 501c3, and therefore they're not expecting to get money back because ultimately they might not get it anyway, and then they're getting a write-off. Maybe they're getting a write-off either way.
Yeah, so the question is, if someone's interested in giving but hasn't selected the method, because that person could be an investor, or they could say, I'm gonna give you a grant. And so I actually have two individuals. One did it as a grant, because she has a foundation set up, and one did it as an investment. And I think it's just their personal preference. They usually come to you with, some people, they wanna be in film financing. Maybe they're financing in narratives. Maybe they have a business doing that. It's usually not like if someone comes to you and says, I want to invest, you say, hey, how about a grant? Usually they come to you with a preferred vehicle. I wouldn't try and push them one way or the other, because usually at the levels that we're talking about, so if somebody's going to be an investor, by the way, you always set a floor, because it's not worth doing the paperwork and the legal and all the rest of it unless you're at least at $50,000 and probably at $100,000. So we're talking about a big chunk of money, and so at that stage, you're usually talking more sophisticated financiers who may have a lawyer that they've worked with a lot who can kind of get those things done.
So we're going to take one final question. Yes, the lady here. Yes.
So you mentioned your working with HBO docs. Can you talk a bit more about how you got involved with them?
Gideon's Army was produced by HBO, and they bought the film before we had a rough cut. They bought the film. They came in very early. Julie Goldman, who was the producer on that film, has a long relationship with them. But I first met them at Tribeca All Access. The project was selected to do that program where Tribeca and a lot of, well, actually, I don't know if a lot of people do this, but at Tribeca All Access, they selected, I think, a number of projects, and then they invited broadcasters, funders, and we had kind of 3 days of meetings. And so we first introduced the project to them. But they're quite approachable. I mean, you can approach any of the commissioners at HBO and explain what your topic is. They really are quite approachable. I mean, they must get a ton of emails, but they answer them. And if they're interested, they will talk to you, and you can go in and have a meeting. You don't have to have an agent or anything like that. It certainly helps if you have somebody with you on your team who's worked with them or knows somebody, but it's not, it's helpful but not essential.
Okay, thank you. So I would just like to share a couple of things before we wrap up, and that is, again, as the executive director of Chicken and Egg Pictures, I'm very often reviewing, submissions to our, various open calls, and so just to say, because I think this might apply to other funders, when, we had 410 applications for our new Accelerator Lab program for first and second time directors, and we chose 10 projects. So, obviously highly competitive, and why did we choose those projects? There's, a lot of different reasons, and there was many other excellent projects that all deserve support, but we look for, creativity also, of course, and what you're submitting, and talent, and all of that. We're also looking to understand, why are you the person to tell this story? It's not just what is unique about this story, but why are you the unique storyteller? And if your film is about an issue that other films, have been made about that, issue or related, we want to know how your film is building on that. We want to know, because we support social issue documentaries for the most part, we want to know how you're going to use your film, and are you, going to be, getting the film out there to the right audiences, and, again, your tenacity and your fundraising ability, are you going to be successful in sort of staying the course, completing the film, and raising the money, and of course we're looking for other things as well, but those are some of the things that we look for. Do we have time for each of the panelists to say anything? So is there anything finally you would love to share and for people to walk away with in terms of fundraising?
I think it is hard, but it's not impossible. And so you should pace yourself, and I think you should congratulate yourselves for coming here, because coming to conferences like this, meeting people, not looking down at your phone the whole time and actually looking around at the people next to you who may have the key to your project is really, really important. So I think you should be really happy that you are here and somebody else is on Facebook at their desk.
I would say perseverance is key. You get a lot of no's and a lot of rejections, and that doesn't mean that your film is not valid. I think it takes some time for the film to start reflecting what it is that you want the film to be, and it takes a lot of patience with yourself to develop that. And so I would say that work in progress screenings are also a form of support, because you get audience feedback that way. So it might be that a foundation is able to offer that and not necessarily money, and that's also a great support that you can benefit from.
And I think I would say, it's a process, but you'll get there one way or another as long as you commit to doing that. And I think it's important to know yourself, bring on someone who loves fundraising, and this is just kind of makes you have nightmares and it's terrible and you're really bad at it. It is possible to get there with a good partner. But I think more than anything, I think the one thing that I didn't think about earlier in the process, because I was just so focused on making this possible, and now we're in post-production and we're kind of getting toward the end, we still have a gap to fill, but it's becoming more of an inevitable thing, I think. Is that I didn't really think a lot about how to be whole, sort of energetically and financially coming out of this process. And so I think especially if you are a first-time filmmaker, maybe a second-time filmmaker, maybe if you have another way of making money, you don't always think immediately about what do I want to get out of this at the end of it, in terms of having paid myself well, having made this a sustainable experience so that I can go on to the next film. And that is absolutely important to think about. So don't think about paying yourself less or doing more cheaply, just think about raising more money and having bigger budgets.
So before I trip off the stage and on my exit, I'd like to thank NYC for putting on this workshop and John for